What's up, everyone? So today I've got a very special guest. He doesn't know what I'm about to say to introduce him, or they, whatever, however, how people self-identify themselves. And people that I'm super into, like neutrality and things. But one thing that I know is about this guest is he's a good-hearted man that actually does really well for himself in many things that he endeavors to do, and probably one of the reasons he's doing well is because he's doing things that do good around him. And I really like this soulful guy. Soulful not in the sense that he's a singer, but you'll see. So we've got Shamash Alidina, who I don't know where to start. He's done so many things. He is not more than doing. He is so many, so many, and also so much than just one role or one job, whatever we phrase that as. So a few things to share about him, and he probably will introduce more about himself if he wants. Um, I've read your website, Shamash. I've actually carefully read your website multiple times in the past, and just not long ago, just a few hours ago, just to be super fresh about that. I love your story. I love your story. I love where you come from. I connect a lot to where you come from, especially coming from a migrant family myself. And I love the fact that there was at some point kind of a sense of disconnection, maybe, or not clear, lack maybe of clarity and purpose, and that finally you found that meaning and purpose. And that what you do today is something that is not only meaningful to you, but also for so many people around the world. And you're doing amazing. You're doing amazing. So Shamash has, for those who don't know, well, you should. He's written an amazing book on mindfulness for dummies, which actually has been published. I don't know where, but so many people have got the book. People talk about this still today after so many years. He's trained so many people in mindfulness. He's a founder of amazingly what is called and understood as the first museum of happiness in the world. And he then went into exploring kindfulness and now has found a new purpose and changing a lot of lives around a concept, more than a concept, an approach called ACT. Which stands for Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. So today we have Shamash with us. And Shamash, welcome to Passion Talk.
Thank you. Wow, what an introduction. I'm so excited to be here and really excited to spend time with you always. And it's been too long, so excited about this conversation.
It's been too long. And Shamash, you know what? Let's go straight into this. There's so many things I'd love to ask about you, but what have you been busy with this past month and years when the whole world has been through a crazy era, completely disruptive, called a pandemic? What have you been up to? What have you been doing for yourself, but also for people around you that could potentially change lives?
Well, as you start saying those words, what comes to mind is when I first found out about the pandemic and the lockdown and what was about to unfold in the UK, and it certainly took a week or two to just process the massive change that everyone was about to go through. And then when I started to reflect upon my own passions and my own values, I thought I couldn't just sit back or stand back. I had to think of some way in which I could meet this challenge. And so I did a little survey of our list, and the number one challenge was anxiety. So the first thing that we did is we brought together all the different teachers that specialized in mindfulness, ACT, and compassionate approaches to deal with anxiety. And we've had this free kind of online conference a few weeks after the pandemic started. And that took up quite a bit of our time and effort and resources. So that's the first thing that we did. Second thing is I reached out to our mindfulness teachers and I said, how should we respond to this? How do you feel? Because none of you are able to work in person. What shall we do? And a lot of them were interested in sort of submitting a chapter and putting a book together as a community. So we all got together and we wrote a chapter each called Mindfulness for Challenging Times. And we published that and we put all the profits back into the World Health Organization to try and help this massive challenge that we were all facing as a global community. So that was really meaningful and aligned with people's passions and values. And then as things unfolded, there was that peak of energy when we first discovered what was happening. But then the next challenge was it just was ongoing and went month after month and even became year after year. So being able to continue sustainably through that was difficult. But one of the things that I grew more and more passionate about was ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy and training, because I had more time to read and research it. So I decided to share more about that and aligning with the book stuff that I've mentioned, because I've published a lot of books myself. But what really gets me excited is empowering others to help them publish their first book. That's even more exciting for me than writing a book. And so we did that last year. And now just 2 weeks ago, we started with a new group of about 10 people that want to publish their own mindful book, but in their own speciality, aligned with their own passions. So different, mindfulness is a huge field. And what's important is finding that little niche where you've personally transformed and you want to help others transform and help to create your own community around that. So helping others to do that has been something that I love, and it's become clearer to me what my passion is. Just over the last few months, I'm always reflecting on it, and I think at the moment it's more about empowering others and that having that opportunity to help people overcome their fears and their barriers and to reach out to more people in a way that's meaningful for them. That's something that really excites me. So there's a few things that I've been working on.
Wow, this is amazing. I mean, speaking about changing lives, and one thing that you just mentioned is so you gathered a few people, quite a lot of people that have specific skills, and then you really unpack this concept, this approach of ACT. So, what is ACT, and how does ACT? I guess the question is, what is ACT, and to what extent could people benefit from knowing more about ACT, especially in a time like this one, where still some people call it an endemic, but the virus is still here and people have lost beloved ones and lost jobs and forced to work from home with, the dogs, the kids shouting, or just in a tiny space like here we are in London. To what extent what is ACT, and to what extent is ACT beneficial to people in the world in these crazy times right now?
So during this pandemic, we were all hit by this virus, and the massive search was on for a vaccine to try and help us to deal with that challenge. And whether we took a vaccine or our own immune system dealt with the challenge, that was a physical health response to it. But at the same time, a wave of mental health challenges also came along. And so how do we deal with that mental health challenge when we're faced with loss of people in our family, loss of our jobs, the change of our circumstances, when things that were, we took for granted are now just not possible or easily possible anymore? How do we deal with that challenge? And this is what ACT is offering. You could almost think of it as an antidote or a vaccine for our mental and emotional well-being. And what ACT does is, interestingly, it doesn't focus on just trying to feel good in the moment. Our emotions change all the time. They go up and down. Sometimes we feel great when something good's happening, and we don't feel so good when things are not going so well. That's totally, perfectly normal and natural. And one of the things that ACT discovered is if we get too obsessed trying to hold on to a certain feeling, like happiness in the moment, then we become fearful when that goes away, or we think there's something wrong with us when we don't have it. And interestingly, the definition of happiness as feeling good is only about 100 years old. And beyond that, it wasn't about feeling good. It was about something that you mentioned earlier, which is doing good. It was about living in alignment with our values, doing things that make a positive difference, rather than focusing on emotions. And nowadays, you look at most adverts and commercials, they're all about take this pill or do this action or join this club, and it will make you feel good, feel better. And what ACT discovered is that, and it's really interesting the way they've researched it as well, because they haven't researched it to create a certain program. They've research the underlying processes that are valid, whether you have great mental health or not. It's valid for everyone wherever the mind goes. So it's good underlying research. And what they found is that these 6 particular processes, and they independently work together, but they also work in connection with each other. And these 6 processes are the 6 skills that we need to develop for our what is called psychological flexibility. Sounds like a bit of mumbo jumbo, but in fact, there's been over 3,000 studies on psychological flexibility, and it's arguably one of the most researched concepts in psychology that links to our resilience and well-being. And what psychological flexibility, which is at the heart of ACT, what it's all about is helping you to live a meaningful life. So rather than trying to focus on how do I live a life where I'm happy all the time, or live a life when I'm passionate all the time, it would be how do I live a meaningful life, a rich and meaningful life, and how do I navigate all the difficult feelings and difficult thoughts and difficult sensations that come up when I do that. And I've created this acronym for these 6, and it's nice and easy to remember. It's the word action. A stands for acceptance, or allowing, or making space for our feelings. C stands for, it's a psychological term called cognitive diffusion, but it essentially means learning to unhook from our thoughts. So our thoughts don't have so much of a hold on us, even the negative so-called thoughts. T is one of my favorite ones. T stands for transcendent self, and it's about learning to have a more flexible sense of who we are, rather than getting fixated on I am this or I am that, being more flexible about who we are. We know a lot about is about mindfulness, about being present, being in the moment. O is about opening our heart to our values. I think this might be one of your favorite ones, or it could be opening your heart to your passions, because if we're passionate about our values, I would argue. And N is the final piece, which is really important. You can do all this stuff, but not take any action. So N is about navigating and taking action on your passions, taking action on your values. So not just knowing all this, but moving forwards and moving towards breaking those inner barriers that we have about what we feel we can or can't do. So this framework is so well researched that the World Health Organization has created a whole document on their website now. If you want to manage difficulties and stress, they've created this almost cartoon-like thing with multiple languages, and essentially making it nice and simple and accessible to help people to be present, to open up to their inner world of thoughts and feelings, and in a kindful way take meaningful action no matter what challenging situation they face.
This sounds very, very practical. And I'm wondering, how do we implement that for those busy bees who work so many hours in a day? I mean, we all have to pay the bills, we all have to get a job. For those who are, have to, live a normal life and have to work. How could action, the 6 processes, 6 steps within your ACT approach, how could action be deployed, for example, for active professionals in an organizational setting? How could this work, do you think?
So specific research has been done on taking ACT into the workplace, and there's certain programs and trainings that have gone into the workplace, and they find it helps people to be more resilient and more psychologically flexible. But it doesn't have to be a huge thing. You can start with like little 1-minute exercises. So we all know, or hopefully many of you know, about mindfulness, and so you could do some short mindful exercises to be present. Before you start your day, you could take 3 or 4 mindful breaths, so you're a bit more present with what you're doing. But then to go to those more unusual concepts I mentioned about, let's say, values and meaning, you could think about, okay, I'm busy, I'm at work, but why am I doing this work? Why am I here? What is it about this work that makes it meaningful for me? And there may be something inherent in the work that you enjoy. Maybe there's some creative element there. And if not, and you're earning the money so you can support your family, then what's meaningful for you is supporting your family. And so you take a few moments to reflect on that, maybe having a photograph there on your desk and taking a moment to think, no, there's a reason why I'm doing this and why I want to do a good job, because it's going to make a difference to myself and my family. Another tip that comes to mind is that, let's say there's some negative thought that keeps coming into your head again and again, and you've tried hundreds of different therapies, but they still keep coming back. Well, what ACT is saying is do the opposite. So you take a card, you write down that negative thought, and you realize it's just a thought. It doesn't have to impact your behavior, So you write that thought down and you just say, I notice I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough at work. And you take that card, you actually put it in your pocket, and you say, I'm going to carry on doing the work that I want to do. I'm going to take the action that's meaningful for me. And I'm not going to think that I have to get rid of this thought to be able to be a good person or to take positive action. So it helps to finally stop fighting with yourself and fighting with those inner thoughts and demons, and actually make peace with them. So there's loads of different little exercises like that, but there's a few that come to mind.
This is super great. Very practical tips here for anyone who's listening or watching. And so with this whole digitization of the world and digitization in the workplace, how could ACT be translated into? How do we apply this, in synchronous or asynchronous type of work or session? How does it work in a digital era now with employees and people all around the world? How could ACT be facilitated, diffused, do you think?
Yeah. Well, technology and the digital world needs to be used as a tool rather than us being a slave to it. And because of the way technology works, it can be made more and more addictive by the tech companies. And so if we don't have a level of mindfulness, we could spend our whole day on social media, our whole day on Google, a whole day on YouTube, and all these different fantastic algorithm-based websites, which are actually designed to keep you there for as long as possible. And so one of my theories for why mindfulness has become so huge and so popular is because people have found it to be an antidote to this massive addiction that we can have through technology, which is not always a pleasant experience, because at the beginning it may be fun, but then you start spending hour after hour, day after day, and year after year on it. You realize that it's something that we're using too much. And it's the same for the workplace. There's been nice research about how even if you take a few minutes at the end of the week or the end or beginning of the day to reflect, like what tools do I need to use today? Or where am I taking this work, or where am I taking this business? Just taking even a few minutes to reflect on that before you dive into your email or whatever app that you're using, then you will be able to be in control of the choices and the decisions you're making. And the heart of ACT is about being conscious and making conscious choices and decisions, rather than opening your email and seeing a list of emails and letting that be your to-do list. You step back and you choose, okay, what is it that I want to achieve and I want to do? How do I want to make my passion into a reality in the world? How can I engage that passion? How can I engage those values? And then aligning with that, dealing with the actions you need to take, which may or may not involve technology.
Really, really love it. So really being able to, trying not to be slave of technology and digital, which in fact should be serving us and not the other way around. So if there was specific tips that you would give people who are listening and watching now, simple things that they could actually do right now to incorporate and bring ACT to their lives, to their work, to their person, what would this be? Practical things that they could actually start right now at home, in the office, in the car.
Sure. Yeah. Well, here's a simple one, which is just as you're listening to this, whether you're traveling or moving or you're sitting still now, just noticing the sensations in your body. Now, it sounds simple or overly simple, but as you start noticing the sensations in your body, the posture that you're sitting in, you start to realize that the seat of your emotions is also through this physical body. Okay, when you start getting more and more obsessed with our work, we start thinking of our body as just a vehicle for carrying our brain from one meeting to another meeting, or from one Zoom meeting to another meeting. But that's not what it's about. The body and the brain together are really, really important, and we spend too much time in our heads and thinking. So one simple way is just noticing the sensations in your body and asking yourself, how am I feeling physically? How am I feeling emotionally? What thoughts are arising in my mind? Again, it doesn't have to take long. It can just take a minute. And what you're doing there is you're doing a little check-in. You're noticing what's happening in your internal landscape. So we spend so much time in the outer world and connecting with others and talking and looking at stuff and watching TV and all the stuff. Brilliant. But, if we spend even 1% out of that 100% of time in the day, just turning inwards, just noticing what's going on, that starts to cultivate an emotional intelligence that can make a big difference. Another thing you could ask yourself is, what am I passionate about at the beginning of the day, or what do I value? What's meaningful for me? And how can I spend a little moment, even if it's for a minute or two, turning that passion or value into action? And that can make such a big difference. Just something which I'm really big on this idea of Kaizen, like the small steps that make a difference. So think of a tiny way in which you can fulfill that. So for me, I mentioned empowering others is really meaningful for me. So having this conversation and talking about what I'm passionate about, I'm thinking, maybe empowering for you or for someone out there. And so it's meaningful for me. It makes a big difference. So linking your actions to your values as a little reflection is another thing that comes to mind. And another simple one, which is easy to remember, is that when you wake up and your feet touch the floor in the morning, you could just say something like, today is going to be a meaningful day. Or today I'm going to live my life in line with my passions. Or today I'm going to be present and mindful. And that's a really good technique because unless you fly out of your bed in the morning and don't touch the ground, your feet are going to touch the floor at some point. And it's a nice point because when that contact happens, it can trigger the next action you need to take. It's something that behavior scientist B.J. Fogg recommends, Dr. B.J. Fogg. And so when your feet touch the floor, it's a great moment to do a tiny habit, a 10-second habit. So that could be a good one. So you're setting your intention to live in line with your values at the start of the day.
Beautiful. Really, really beautiful. I accompany a lot of people and coach quite a few people on behavioral shifts. And I really like some of those very practical tips that you just shared because they are practical. They are short. It doesn't take hours. And you actually have to do it. Unless for certain circumstances, people will wake up in the morning and have their feet touch the ground. And fascinating. And I really love that. And I'm going to walk away with that very resonant sentence. Today is going to be a meaningful day. Well, today is going to be a meaningful day for everyone who is listening or watching right now. Shamash, that has been amazing. Thank you so much for your wisdom as usual. You're such a sunshine, right? And always like having that beautiful, shiny smile. And that is so great that you're sharing this beautiful message, practical tips. Practical, I'm noticing that this is a word I've been using 4 or 5 times. I think this is something that's going to be so beneficial for people who are listening. Shamas, thank you so much. It's been amazing, and I really, really hope it's gonna help people who are listening and give food for thoughts for others who will be browsing this as well.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed the chat. If you did, share, like, subscribe, and please join me for the next one.